View. Joins me now in the studio for a look through this morning's French newspapers. Good morning, Oliver.
Good morning.
What have you got for us today?
First up, the French press are all about the so-called fiscal revolt, which has seen the government roll back a number of its proposed measures, most notably a tax on savings accounts. It is, however, keeping the carbon tax on fuel, which gave rise to violent protests in Brittany this weekend. Now, the Catholic daily La Croix says the government is under fiscal pressure, and its editorial says there's need for clarity from the government on the matter and its intentions as a whole, and that there are many people on both left and right think they already pay too much in both tax and rates. And that's the latest example of confusion within the government, with a number of ministers going off message. And so it says that François Hollande, elected on a reform programme, should clearly announce his intentions. And then the business daily Les Echos says the government is disoriented in the face of fiscal upheaval, pointing out that as well as fuel protesters and middle-income earners, the football clubs are also going on strike.
Yeah,
because
absolutely incredible that. And there's different measures,
Yep.
different fronts on which the tax battle's being fought.
It's coming from all sides.
Yeah, including, as you say, a football strike. Absolutely incredible story, that one.
Yep.
Okay, also, that's right throughout the French press, isn't it?
Yes.
The L'Opinion, the centre-right newspaper, they're
evokes
also
the
talking about
upheaval. They use the word jacquerie, which is an old French word which means peasant revolt. And that's when the peasants revolt in France, you're definitely in trouble. And the right-leaning Le Figaro says the government is caught in a fiscal revolt, saying that the proposed tax measures have aroused popular anger. And its editorial denounces a reactive instinct to tax entitled Tax in the Blood. It says that the government is showing a lack of imagination, lucidity and courage. And it also interviews the opposition leader Jean-François Copé, who warns that the resentment being felt in Brittany is representative of France as a whole. And he says the government has an ideological vision and that the only way to regain the confidence of the French people is to lower taxes.
Okay, so I guess we can say across the board, some pretty negative coverage
it's
for the
bad.
French government and François Hollande. And already people are talking about the 2017 presidential election, whether he's going to be in trouble over with that election because of this tax problem.
Yes, yeah, but the only problem for the UMP is that they don't really have anyone that's really that popular.
That's the centre-right opposition there with Jean-François Copé, who you were just talking about.
Yes.
He's a divisive figure.
He's divisive and he's pretty low in any type of polls, even lower than François Hollande. But Libération says that perhaps the man that could save the UMP is the former Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Alain Juppé. Now, Juppé, who's currently Mayor of Bordeaux, appeared on French radio yesterday and criticised what he called the government's tax shambles. And Libération reports that Juppé will decide whether to run or not, depending on circumstances. It does note that he's probably a little bit too moderate for the UMP at the moment, which is definitely going further to the right. He's considered quite liberal on matters such as gay marriage and also on immigration and so on. His opponents also say he'll be isolated because he hasn't been a member of parliament since 2004. He will also be 71 come the election. But one of his supporters, former Finance Minister François Baron, says the French people may want to go back to a father figure as president. With Sarkozy and Hollande, they chose rather big brothers, Baron says.
Yeah,
now,
Alain Juppé certainly has that kind of gravitas,
yes,
charisma, a lot of people say. So.
Certainly. And the Le Parisien says François Hollande and his Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault are clearly not having a good time of it.
I think that's putting it lightly,
yes,
isn't it?
it's decidedly not okay, says their headline. And not a week goes by without the government being confronted by some turbulence. It says the next year's municipal elections already look like being a painful experience for the socialists, but it notes that Hollande, like Mitterrand before him, is not getting discouraged, and he thinks his reforms will pay off.
He's in it for the long haul. We'll have to see if we can get through this kind of hiccup stage.
Yes, and then we have the left-wing L'Humanité, which runs with the occupation of a company by workers, mainly Egyptian, who complain of having been exploited and treated like cattle by the company, who gave them the impression that they actually had legal working papers to work in France because they had been moved from Italy. They were legal in Italy. And they're now threatened with deportation, and the CGT trade union says it's like something out of Émile Zola.
Okay, very distressing story there. Thanks very much indeed, Oliver, for that look through the French newspapers this morning. All right. Right, stay tuned to Live from Paris. Coming up in the next half hour, we've got Focus looking at the fate of those Greenpeace activists detained in Russia.